The snow in Pine Hollow had a way of swallowing sound. It was the kind of cold that bit into your bones, the kind that made even the bravest stay indoors. Sheriff Caleb Warner knew it well, but what he saw that morning would haunt him for years. Just beyond the old train station, buried under a thin blanket of snow, a figure sat slumped against a bench. Her coat was frosted white, her hair stiff with ice, and her hands locked tight as if even death couldn't take them, was a yellowed envelope. Caleb took off his hat, his breath forming a white cloud. "God," he whispered, as his deputy knelt beside her. The name on the letter was barely legible ink smudged by snow and tears. Caleb was a man of routine. Every morning after sunrise, he checked in with Pine Hollow residents. He knew everyone and they knew him. So when the locals didn't answer their phones, it was cause for concern. That's why he was out that morning, though he never would have guessed it was because of this girl that he ended up changing both their lives forever. They took her to the small county morgue. While the coroner worked, Caleb kept the letter on his desk. The handwriting was careful, almost old-fashioned. It was addressed simply, "To Daniel, if you're reading this, I never made it." The first line of the note itself was heartbreaking. It was worth it. Then she wrote about love lost, about mistakes she could never undo, and a promise to deliver this letter in person before the year's first snow. Caleb wondered, what kind of love could make someone walk into a Montana blizzard? He started calling every Daniel Carter, Daniel Holloway, Daniel anyone in the county records. After hours of dead ends, he found one Daniel Brooks living far up Hollow Creek Road. But first the girl. Caleb needed answers. He combed through her belongings, searching for clues. All he found was an old photo of her and a boy holding up fish, 2 train tickets, a worn paperback of poetry in that letter. In the picture, Lillian held a butterfly net, the kind kids use for catching bugs. And standing next to her was a boy, grinning broadly. He looked around 10, maybe 12. On the back, scrunched between the plastic, some words, "Danny, I love you." He was older, taller, but there was no mistaking who that boy had grown up to be. On the train ticket, the date was yesterday. The girl had arrived alone, but she hadn't come from out of town. She was heading out, away from Pine Hollow. Why? Before Caleb could dwell on it, the phone rang. It was the coroner. Time of death, early that morning, cause unknown. No sign of trauma or foul play, but she had a damn good head start on hypothermia. Basically, she froze. There was a long pause. "Caleb, you wouldn't happen to be looking for a John Doe, would ya?" Uh-oh. This was getting complicated. The girl had no ID. Now she had no name. The only lead Caleb had was this letter. He dialed the number again. This time it went straight to voicemail. No surprise. The day was already turning into one of those November ones where the sun never seems to rise. But Caleb had work to do. He drove out of town, following the only Hollow Creek Road. Now, the road wasn't exactly hard to find. It was just hard to stay on. It twisted through the forest, over creeks and under snow-laden pines. The mailbox numbers seemed to disappear after 23, but Caleb wasn't worried about missing his turn. He had a name now, Danny Carter. And this letter was his only clue. The house was old, paint peeling from its porch rails, windows boarded up. It looked abandoned, yet a light shone from behind the curtains. As he knocked, Caleb watched the light flicker. Was it on when he pulled in? Maybe, or maybe whoever lived there was watching him. He knocked again. The door opened slowly. Standing there was a woman with tired eyes and a faded beauty that reminded Caleb of fallen leaves clinging to autumn. "Yes?" she said, voice hoarse. "Ma'am, I need to ask you a few questions about your son." She flinched, then closed the door. Moments later, it opened again. The woman stood aside, revealing a man. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined with a lifetime of hard work. Beside him, a woman with fiery red hair ran a hand through her own graying locks. She looked like the woman from the doorway, just younger, happier. "Can I help you?" Daniel asked, his voice weary. Caleb showed him the letter. Daniel stiffened, his eyes widening. "How did you get this?" He turned to the woman. "Mary, is that your handwriting?" She nodded, tears welling up. "I didn't think anyone saw that." Caleb handed the letter to Daniel. "You need to read this." He watched as Daniel's shoulders slumped. "She died trying to find me," he whispered. When the snow fell that night, it erased most tracks. Caleb hadn't found the girl until she was gone. Yet somehow the sight of her frozen body against the snow had brought a strange peace to the town. Most didn't know her, but they knew her story. Now, as he watched Daniel and Mary embrace, Caleb knew they had found a different kind of peace. He was glad he delivered the letter, yet wished he hadn't. Seeing the pain it had caused, he turned to go. "Wait," Daniel called. "Do you know what happened to her?" Caleb shook his head. "Last time I saw her, she was walking toward the train station." Daniel looked out at the falling snow, 1,000 unspoken words in his eyes. He had failed his daughter once. He wouldn't do it again. He drove to the station, arriving just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was beautiful, yet Caleb saw only gray. Inside, the old station master sat stoking a small fire. "Any news?" Caleb asked. "About her?" "God, no. All I know is she left on the train last night. Headed east. She paid in cash, said she was meeting someone." "Anyone she say?" "Nope. Seems she didn't want to wait any longer." Caleb hoped whoever was waiting for her was worth it. As he stepped out, a police radio crackled. The dispatcher's voice was sharp. "All units, be advised, we have a possible John Doe matching the description of our Jane Doe at the hospital. Repeat, possible John Doe matches our Jane Doe. Please hurry." Daniel was sitting in his truck outside the hospital. It was going to be a while before he learned if she had made it. He wasn't sure he wanted to. What if it was too late? What if she was better off without him than a miracle? A doctor rushed out, his face breaking into a wide smile. "She's awake," he said, and asking for Danny. Caleb stood to leave. Daniel caught his arm. "There's something you should know," he said. "I wrote to her once, years ago. She never got it. Post office said the address didn't exist, but I never stopped hoping." Daniel pulled out an old envelope. "Here's the letter I sent. I want you to read it to her." Caleb hesitated, but he owed her that much. Weeks later, as winter began to thaw, Caleb got a call from the county hospital. A woman frostbitten, barely alive, had been found in a snowbank outside town. She was weak, unable to speak at first. But when she opened her eyes, she whispered, "Daniel." Against all odds, Lillian had survived, the letter she never sent. It was known Daniel's hands read aloud to her by the man she had walked through a blizzard to find. For the first time, Pine Hollow saw Daniel smile. And for the first time in her life, Lillian felt warm.